Are you getting bored of delivering presents from A to B because you can't think of a better way to grind up to that new AMRAM wielding superjet? Well, never fear because I have the solution for you. Today's video sponsor is GE for War Thunder. Basically, it's just this little app that you download and you play some games on it, you do some like little tasks, and you get rewarded with Golden Eagles. Use my referral code NXSWK to get some extra Golden Eagles when you first sign up. It keeps your mind busy and helps shorten the grind. Link is in the description. War Thunder's Air Simulator game mode is a massively different experience to AirRB. Not only does it get played in a different game mode known as Enduring Confrontation, where matches can last up to 3 hours, but player markers are removed as well as your camera position actually being locked inside the cockpit. This means that even though the actual physics themselves are the same as in realistic battles, the way the match actually plays out is completely different to that of AirRB. Just the fact that the camera position is locked inside the cockpit means the cockpit visibility actually becomes a factor now, and obviously makes planes like the F-16 with a super clear canopy and HUD super desirable, while planes like the MiG-15 leave you wondering if you really need all of that bulletproof glass in the front. Now take player markers away, meaning that you're looking for tiny little black dots flying around rather than big red name tags, and you can start to tell that situational awareness, that's to say you know what's actually going on around you at any given time, starts to come at a bit of a premium. Now, while this can be a little bit daunting to get used to if you're new to the game mode, at the end of the day everyone's in the same boat. However, as you start to get into the higher tiers, this isn't so true anymore. Now, Sim has one big underlying issue at top tier right now, and if you've played the game mode in the last year or so, you might already know what I'm about to talk about, especially if you've been trying to find matches for the American team. As you've probably noticed, there aren't that many actually going, but then when you switch over to Russia, all of a sudden the whole page fills up. Now, the reason for this is simple. Team balancing. Because there's no markers in Sim, you don't have any mixed teams, so 99.9% of the time in the top echelon, you always have the USA and friends versus Russia, China, and Germany. Usually what happens in AirRB whenever Gaijin release a new top tier vehicle, that's the new best, it's the new meta vehicle or whatever for one of the top nations, is that everyone just flocks over to that vehicle, and then the matches get kind of boring because everyone's flying the same plane and you don't get much variation. Now, when it comes to the sim game mode, obviously people aren't going to change their behavior. They're still going to flock to the new vehicle, and what ends up happening though in sim is because there's no mixed teams, let's just say Russia, for instance, gets a new meta jet, right? Let's just say the SU-27 is the new best thing in the world and it cannot be beaten. What follows is that Russian teams become absolutely stacked because everyone wants to play this new OP vehicle, right? And now if you also want to play the new overpowered vehicle, there's not going to be any place for you on the team, and because it's sim, you're not going to be able to take that vehicle and play on the opposite side, because that obviously doesn't work. So you either just leave the game mode and don't play altogether, or you bite the bullet and you go play an aircraft on the other team, but now you're flying a plane that you're not really super interested in. It's probably also a little bit worse than what they're all flying on the other team, and you're also outnumbered. Now, the average player isn't going to last too long in a match like that because you just end up getting spawn camped. Every engagement becomes a 1v3, and if you can't manage to somehow outsmart every single opponent, you're not going to have a lot of fun. Let's also not forget about funds here as well, because every time you do die into a 1v3 or 1v4 or something like that, you're going to have to pay the repair cost or spawn cost as it is in Sim, but it's basically the same thing. Meaning that in this case, a lot of players just will outright not be able to afford to play this game mode. Balance is a very important factor for Sim, and I understand it's a tricky thing to get right. Balance in any multiplayer video game is a hard concept to sort of nail down, and the problem here is that red side, again that's Russia, China and Germany, is being mostly represented by the SU-27SM because that's the Russian plane. Russia is by far the most played nation on the red side right now, so making the SU-27SM the most popular plane that you find on red side teams. And when you factor in the amount of responsibility, if you will, that this thing carries with it, it's just not good enough, plain and simple. So what exactly is the problem with the flanker? It just received 2 extra missiles in the last patch, as well as the HMS radar lock range also being increased up to 20 kilometers. The flanker does still have a couple of issues with it, one being the R-77. Now the R-77, while it does do really well in close quarters, its lack of range does leave a lot to be desired, making it quite an unreliable missile if you fire it even in like medium range shots, right? Then there's the whole flight performance debacle, where we've already had numerous bug reports of people essentially proving that the flight model on the flanker in-game is actually underperforming to where it should be in real life. Now, By how much this is, I don't know, but it definitely seems like the plane is losing too much energy too quickly. The transition from medium speed to low speed flight seems to be very abrupt, making it a very difficult plane to dogfight in, as well as it's just losing too much speed in the whole slow speed fight anyway. Now, I would argue that these aren't actually the main issues with the flanker, what's causing this imbalance that we currently have. I was already foreshadowing this a little bit earlier in the video, but to just put it out there, the problem with the flanker is that its situational awareness just isn't on the same level as the planes that it's fighting, and this is mainly due to the N001 radar that it gets. To put it bluntly, this radar set is an absolute piece of shit. It takes about 8 seconds to complete an entire scan. Compare that to the average of 2 to 3 seconds on the planes that it's fighting at its bracket. This means that your target's position is only going to get updated every 8 seconds, and that's providing the scan that eventually scans the part of the sky where your target is in actually gives you a radar return. And if it doesn't, which does happen from time to time, you're going to have to wait another 8 seconds, meaning now you're waiting up to 16 seconds. And then also, the cherry on top, if it's the first time you're scanning, a lot of the time the Russian radars actually need 2 scans in order to IFF the thing. So if you get really unlucky, it might actually take you up to 24 seconds for you to get an actual radar track that's decent enough for you to confidently launch an R-77 at. And you know, considering the R-77 is a close range missile because of its lack of range, trying to do all of this within, let's just say, 15 kilometers, yeah, I mean, you can see where the issues kind of start to arise, right? Now, of course, it did get its helmet-mounted sight radar slaving mode buffed up to 20 kilometers from the previous 10 kilometers that it was at. But just like with the IRST system, the problem with this is that it doesn't actually IFF your target. So even if you know that there's a plane over there, and you don't need to wait for your radar to actually scan, you can just kind of point the radar at the the HMS on it, hit the button, and it locks the target up. You're not going to get an IFF return, so you're not going to know if that's a friendly or an enemy that you're actually locking. This means it actually requires some amount of guesswork as to if that is actually an enemy or not. Now, you can kind of figure this out if it's like a 1v1 situation where there's a lone enemy over in that direction. They might be coming from their spawn, that they might have just shot something down and you saw it on the kill feed or whatever. And in these situations, the flanker doesn't actually perform too badly. The problems start to occur when there's more than 2 opponents near you, and because you ideally want to get solid radar scans on all 3 of those targets, which isn't difficult to do by the way in an F-15 or an F-16 or a Gripen or something like that, this can actually be quite a lot of faffing about in the flanker, and especially if you only have a couple of seconds to react. So while the HMS radar slaving thing is nice, and it's definitely useful in a handful of situations, it's not something that you can always rely on. It also doesn't do anything for your situational awareness, as you already know where the plane is at, you just don't know what it is. And then if you get the radar pointed over there in the scan mode to try and get any kind of IFF reading when you only have a couple of seconds to react, it's just not going to happen in a lot of cases with this radar. And while you are faffing about with it, just trying to get it to scan the thing that you can clearly see in front of you, you most likely already have an invisible AIM-9M heading your way and you're seconds from being blown up. So, and that really is the main problem with the flanker. You just don't get enough information fed to you in the situations where you really need it. So while having an extended HMS radar slaving range now and 2 extra missiles is a nice thing to have, it doesn't really solve the main problem with this plane, and to be honest with you, I'd even argue that these are 2 features that this plane should have had when it came out. So what does this mean for the game mode then? Well, in theory, I mean, the flanker is still kind of bad despite the minor buffs that it got, and with it still being the most prevalent plane on the red side, in theory blue teams should still be stacked, meaning that it's really difficult for me to find a decent populated match that I can join as the American team in. However, if you are paying attention to the gameplay, you may have noticed that right now this is, in fact, blue side gameplay, which is a really rare occurrence on my channel, by the way. So how is this possible? Well, we got to talk about the J-10A. Absolutely fantastic aircraft. However, it does have one major issue, and that is that it's sitting at the top of the Chinese tech tree, which is a tech tree that not a lot of people have. So while this plane is on par with some of the American jets, even doing some things better in my opinion, it's not, there just isn't enough of them on the team usually to solve the balancing crisis that Sim has been experiencing for the last year or 2. However, it's not like it had absolutely no impact in the game mode at all. People that fly the J10, if you look at the scoreboard, they generally have more kills than the people flying the flankers. So if you're a reasonable person, it's pretty safe to assume that they're getting more kills in the J10 than they would be getting if they were flying the flanker in that match. This means that more blue planes are getting shot down, which puts a lot more pressure on the team, which means that you as a red side pilot, even if you're not in the J10 yourself, if you're in the flanker or even the MiG-29 SMT or something like that, you're not every engagement is a 1v3 now, which is kind of like what it used to be. You actually get a lot more 1v1s, or at least that's been my experience over the last couple of weeks of me playing top tier. And what I've noticed as well is that when I've actually been playing matches on the blue side, that red teams have started to become a bit more aggressive as well. No doubt due to the flanker also getting 2 extra missiles, so they can just kind of fire off, can spam them a little bit more now. So you do find yourself going defensive a little bit more now if you're in your F-15 or whatever. The fact that red team can fight back a little bit now also means that they generally have more players on the team because less people have just left, right? Which was a big problem the last couple months. So while you might have to dodge a few more R-77s than you might be used to, at the end of the day, you still have the better radar, the better Fox 3, the better Fox 2, the AIM-9M is still absolutely overpowered in Sim. And of course, you also have the better flight performance. Meaning that whenever you do actually start to try hard in one of the American jets, you're just absolutely going to steamroll the enemy team. Maybe not the entire team, but you're going to win the engagements that you find yourself in if you play them correctly. And this is just a thing that's always been the case with the American planes. Of course, now the J10 is also there, which you do need to look out for, and it is a very good aircraft, but it's not overpowered. I mean, if you're better than the guy in the J10, you should still be coming out on top in that fight, right? Even if both of you are like equally skilled, the J10 isn't just going to walk all over you. I mean, you're looking at a clip right now where I actually forgot to drop the 2 fuel tanks I still had on the F-16, and I managed to gun kill this guy after a couple turns. So, it's not impossible. Now, if you're an avid viewer of my channel, you may remember that I actually made a video like this in the past when Fox 3s got added, and the main issue with that video was essentially that if you were playing on the red side, you were going up against a better equipped enemy and also more of them. Meaning that not only did you have to deal with constant bullshit, but you had to deal with multiple bullshits at the same time. And what's been happening over the last couple months is that the people that primarily populate the red team, and Sim doesn't have a very big player base, so especially if you're only playing 1 battle rating, you do tend to end up running into the same kind of people. And in fact, if you've been paying attention to red side team compilations over the last couple of months or so, you definitely would have noticed the same names popping up. And this is where I'm going to definitely lose most of the audience that are watching this video right now, when I say that the general population of top tier red teams right now in Sim are better than the general population of the blue side teams. Whoa, don't throw me in the bin just yet, please. Just hear me out, okay? Of course, there are absolutely cracked players on the blue side that will kick my ass any day of the week, right? That's not what I'm on about. If you look at the way the average blue side player has been playing their F-15 or their F-16 over the last couple months, a lot of them just do tend to climb right after spawn and then toss their AMRAMs and then turn around and go home. Now, I get it's not always exactly like that, but most of the time they see something on radar, fly in a straight line towards it, fire their AMRAM or their AIM-9M, and then either they hit or they don't. And if they don't, they get to the merge, they fly in a straight line, or they do like half a turn whilst going 1300 kilometers an hour, catch an R-73 behind because their turn cycle is way too wide. Now again, I'm really not trying to insult anyone here. At the end of the day, why wouldn't you fly like this? I mean, it does work a lot of the time, and this is exactly what the F-15, the F-16 is designed to do. Climb really high, fire an AMRAM at stupid ranges, and then turn around and go home. And a lot of the time, it does get the job done. It does actually work. So why wouldn't you fly like that? Well, the situation that this has led to now is that for months on end, we've had one particular set of players essentially just taken off, flying in a straight line, hitting a button and then turning back around, right? That's just a simple way to put it. While on the other hand, we've had another set of players that have constantly had to stay low, sneak around in the hopes of trying to somehow force any kind of close range engagement, because that's the only time that the flanker really has a chance of getting a kill, meaning that they're probably going to have to hit perfect 90-degree notches multiple times per flyout because they're too close to the AMRAM to run away from it, not forgetting to pre-flare and also change the direction of travel in order to avoid the 9M seeker, probably whilst inner notch or multi-pathing, control the speed so that you're not too fast or too slow for the merge, and then actually having to out dogfight your opponent whilst you're in the merge, even though they probably have a slightly better flight model than you do, all while trying to somehow time your fuel load correctly so that you're below 20 minutes by the time you actually get to the fight, which is quite difficult to do because again, the flanker doesn't get any drop tanks unlike the planes that it faces. Now you run this over a couple of months and then you tell me what group of players you think is going to end up doing better once they actually end up getting similarly performing aircraft. And this is almost what's happening in top tier sim right now. The people that have already been flying the flanker on the absolute limit now have a few extra kind of toys to play with now, and they are absolutely making the most out of it. Then there's a J10A, which is in my mind on par with the F-16C, and even if it is only in limited numbers, it definitely is making a difference in the game mode. So what's happening right now is if you're in one of those lobbies where France also happens to be on the red team, blue teams are kind of starting to fall apart now. Now it's not quite on the same level like red teams were falling apart when Fox 3s first got added, but you know, it is kind of getting there now, despite them actually still having the superior aircraft across the board. I'm kind of liking this because it means, for me, I can actually play a match as Britain for once, but it makes me wonder, how are things going to be in the future once we start getting better red side stuff? I mean, the F-15 and the F-16 is essentially just going to stay now for the next couple of patches. We might get some better missiles or whatever, but with things like the J11B on the horizon, which is essentially just a better SU-27SM in almost every single way, it makes me wonder if we're ever going to have the opposite issue in the future where you're not going to be able to find any decent matches for the red team because everyone's playing that now. I don't think it's ever going to be a complete mirror image just because America is the most popular nation or whatever, and you're always going to have people that are going to want to play America. But because the only way for you to find interesting matches was to play on the red team for so long now, I think this whole thing could have just been avoided if we would have a competitive flanker and if we would have just had it from the get-go. Oh, by the way, before I go, some community members right now are trying to make a push on the forums to get Pyrenees, which is an excellent RB map, into the Simulator EC game mode, and it's quite a nice little thread. You can see 66 people have voted in favor of this and 0 people have voted against it, so this is very much something that the community would really like to see. And if you're interested in, you know, giving sim doesn't have a lot of maps for top tier that are, you know, 128 by 128 kilometers. In fact, the only ones with actual terrain are Spain, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. Hence why most of my top tier videos actually, you know, take place on Afghanistan. It would be nice to have another map with a bit of terrain where you can have some interesting gameplay and stuff like that. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, I'll leave a link to this in the description. You can upvote it on the forums. Thank you very much to Corporal Apollo for actually trying to get this through. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to all of that. I know it's been a bit controversial near the end there, but maybe you can let me know what you think about that in the comments, and if you have the same opinion or if you think I'm a complete idiot, then, you know, just let me know. I don't care. But anyway, guys, I do have a community Discord as well. Link is in the description. So if you're looking for a sim-orientated Discord server, or if you're looking for some people to play sim with, you're more than welcome. We have over 1,000 members now. Thank you so much. I've never thought I'd ever actually get a Discord server so big. So yeah, thank you very much. Don't forget to check out the G for War Thunder app as well. Link will be in the description, my promo code as well, for some extra GE. Guys, other than that, thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.